William Blake's The Tyger is one of his best-known and commonly studied poems. It asks readers to consider the very different natures of the world's creatures, like the tiger and the lamb, and questions what kind of God could have made both peaceful and inherently dangerous animals. The poem is quite short, but is filled with so much meaning that it's been the subject of countless essays and analyses of Blake's work. Before delving into the details of the Tyger, let's take note of the key information about this poem. Throughout, Blake engages with the themes of evil and creation. Specifically, he's interested in discussing the varied nature of God's creation. By juxtaposing the good and the bad parts of nature, Blake questions the existence of God, or at the very least, questions what kind of God could be responsible for such different elements of the world. Much of the poem uses an awe-inspired tone as Blake marvels at the danger and supposed evil of the tiger, while other parts of the poem come across as more curious, as Blake questions the nature of the world's creatures. Formally, the poem is divided into 6 quatrains, or sets of 4 lines. They follow a rhyme scheme of A, A, B, B. This creates a steady pattern that's often been compared to the beating of a drum, or, in the context of the poem, the noise a hammer makes as it hits an anvil. This drumming, steady rhythm will be clearer when we go through the first lines of the poem. As noted, the Tyger is a 6-stanza poem with a perfect A-A-B-B pattern. Blake also uses many of the same words throughout, adding to the overall rhythm of the text. He also employs literary devices like repetition, rhetorical questions, metaphors, and examples of juxtaposition. The poem is written with an omniscient narrator. He never uses first-person pronouns, which keeps the poem very vague and broad. It could be anyone discussing the nature of God's creation, not just Blake, and not just a specific persona he's created. The Tyger can be summarized in a few lines that broadly describe what the poem is about. The Tyger questions what kind of God would make a creature as fierce and as formidable as the tiger is. The poem asks whether the same God could have created an innocent creature like a lamb. It implicitly questions the existence of God. The famous opening lines of the Tyger demonstrate Blake's intentions with the poem, as well as the rhyme and rhythm he used. He wrote, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" With each end sound, you can feel the drumming pattern mentioned earlier. It's a steady rhythm that lasts throughout the entire poem. Let's spend a few minutes digging into these opening lines and annotating Blake's various poetic choices. The poem begins with the 2 lines, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night." These lines describe a tiger in the forest at night, filled with power or fire. These things represent a danger to humanity. The first thing to take note of is the poet's use of perfect rhymes at the ends of the lines. The words bright and night are rhymed perfectly. This feature of Blake's poem, as well as his use of alliteration with the words tiger, tiger, and burning bright, creates a clear rhythmic pattern. It's furthered by the use of consonants, or the repetition of the same consonant sound. For example, the repeated T sound is a strong syllabic technique that should remind readers of the pounding of an anvil. You can see it in bright, forests, and night. The next 2 lines of the Tyger read, "What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" Or, to say it more clearly, what god or divine being could have created such a fearful or dangerous creature? Here, Blake is both questioning the existence of God and, if there is a God, what their intentions are. He wonders what God would have created such a creature that poses a danger to humanity and other more innocent creatures. There are more examples of alliteration and consonants in these lines, like frame and fearful in line 4. Now, let's explore a bit of the Tyger's publication information and legacy. This poem was included in William Blake's famous Songs of Experience, published in 1794. It's most commonly analyzed alongside its partner poem, The Lamb, which was published in Songs of Innocence in 1789. These two poems are the most commonly cited examples of the juxtaposed poems in these two volumes. Today, the Tyger is considered to be Blake's most commonly studied poem, and it's usually the first that poetry students are introduced to. In order to better understand Blake's verse, it's helpful to know a bit about who he was and what he did throughout his career. William Blake was born on November 28, 1757, in London. From the early years of his youth, he described having visions of God and angels. By the time he was 10 years old, he began studying art and 2 years later poetry. Throughout his life, he worked as a poet, painter, and printmaker. He made a little money working as an engraver and illustrator for various books and magazines, and his first printed work, Poetical Sketches, appeared in 1783. But today, he's far better known for Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. Today, there are 140 published, known poems by William Blake, but historians believe that there are likely more that have never been published. Amazingly, although he's considered to be one of the best English-language poets of all time, during his career, his work was largely ignored. If you've enjoyed this analysis of the Tyger and the background information on William Blake, visit poemanalysis.com for more. Poem Analysis is your go-to resource for everything you need to know about poetry. We have resources to help you better understand poems, poets, literary devices, and much more. Plus, it's all free to explore.